Hi, my name is Marissa Callie, and I also own a business.
This is the Business AF podcast, where it's all business most of the time.
Good morning, everyone. We are joined by our guest, Melanie Deziel. She is the author of the Content Fuel Framework and brand content expert. Welcome to the show, Melanie.
Thanks for having me.
We're happy to have you on and talk about your book.
Yeah.
But you're in New York, and hopefully you're keeping safe. And we know that things are crazy over there. I used to live in New York, and we could probably talk about that later. But I think what we want to talk about today is kind of just how storytelling, and this is all your thing, right? You talk about storytelling and brand content. But the main thing that we really just want to figure out is kind of what you do and what you focus on. And then we'll get into like the book and what that means in terms of content fuel framework. Yeah. So why don't you tell us a little bit about what you do?
Yeah. So I'm Melanie Deziel. I'm the founder of StoryFuel, which is a company that aims to help marketers and creators learn how to tell better stories. My background is that of a journalist. So I studied journalism. I used to be, creating content for print and digital all the time. But I found that actually my skills were almost more useful in the world of marketing. So kind of helping other marketers, entrepreneurs, influencers, anyone who's sort of in authority or has an audience to communicate with, some of the things that I learned in journalism school that could really help them create more credible content, more compelling content to kind of optimize their content practices. And so everything that I do is really aligned with that mission. So, I do, obviously I wrote the book, which we can talk about later, but I do, workshops in companies usually. I speak at conferences, which is how we met out in San Diego for a social media marketing world. I run a mastermind, really everything that I'm doing though is focused on finding ways to kind of help other people come to love how to tell better stories.
Yeah, I think, and you said that you migrated over to like helping marketers, and it's funny because I think that that's one of the things that us as marketers fail to do because we're so busy helping other people tell their stories, right? It's easy to step outside the box. So it sounds to me like you're helping us, all of us, figure out how we can tell our story. How did you know that this was kind of, you had to move from, the journalism background and kind of more into like helping marketers?
Yeah, I wish that I had some sort of premonition or could magically predict the industry. That is not at all what happened. I went back to graduate school, and when I was still studying journalism at that point, wanted to study arts and cultural criticism. And when I got out of graduate school, I was looking for a job, and all the newspapers, all the magazines, all the websites were sort of downsizing and going digital. And so there really weren't the kind of jobs that I was looking for. So I was like, what am I going to do with all these skills? I thought I would be a journalist. I just went back and invested in even more journalism skills. And now what? And it was actually a recruiter that I was working with who said, actually, I have a job that's more in the business side of things, but a lot of the skills you'd use are the same. And so if you're open to that, I'd love to have you do an interview there. And that's how I really got into branded content, was just a really smart recruiter who realized that my skill set, while it wasn't technically marketing and business, the things that I knew how to do were just as applicable for this other type of role. And once I got into the business side of things, I realized, wow, there's actually a lot of value in having the background and skills that I have, being able to turn content around quickly. I was used to working on deadline. I never got offended by editors because I was used to having content, picked apart and reformatted, when a brand tells you need to revise something, didn't offend me personally. So it actually, came in a lot of handy to be able to take that experience and put it to work in the business side of things.
Oh yeah, that totally does sound like every experience I have with all the companies I work with. So when did you decide to like make this it sounded like you were working with a recruiter and then went to like a corporate job. Yeah. When did you decide, okay, this is my thing and I'm going to go outside of that?
Yeah. So that recruiter brought me into the Huffington Post, was where I started. I was a content strategist there, building out their brand content team.
Hello.
Adventures in working from home, right?
Yeah, right. And we're just getting to the important part, so I'm gonna have to probably download this video and edit it out, but it's okay. It's fine, right? We're agile. So we were talking about you were talking about how you jumped from, working in corporate and understanding, the like Huffington Post and New York Times and all the editors, and how you really went from working that style of work to then on your own.
Yeah. So after being at HuffPost and at the New York Times, I spent a little bit of time at Time Incorporated, and then I was realizing that basically what I was doing, it looked like I was job hopping, but really what I was being brought in to do was train teams on how to create brand content, like train the marketing and sales teams how to be more like storytellers, how to be more like journalists. And so each time at each of those companies, after I stayed for about a year, I had, helped set up the team. I had trained all these people. And then I was sort of like, well, what do I do now? And I would find myself needing a new team to go and help. And so I actually think it was my now husband who made the realization and said, I think you're actually a consultant and you just don't know it, because the reason you keep being brought in is to come in and train people and help them figure out how to do this stuff. And that would be a lot easier and you could help more people if you were on your own. And he was totally right. So what I did after Time Inc., I had been there for a year. I trained the team. We were up and running. And then I said, this time I'm going to step out on my own. Instead of finding a new job for another year, I'm just going to put up my own shingle. And so what is now StoryFuel is, just created this way that I could work with different brands and different publishers and help them set up brand storytelling teams, help them get a handle on what kind of stories their brand could tell. Like I said, I come in, I'll do trainings, workshops, speak at conferences. This just gives me a lot more freedom to be able to help more people and reach more people and hopefully help them come to love storytelling as much as I do.
Yeah, I definitely can identify with that. I mean, being in the industry for so long, and then you realize, okay, like I want to help as many people as possible, but still provide value to them. So you talked, about branded content and, basically mentioned all the different types of content that you can create.
Yeah.
And right now I'm kind of, and I don't know if you're feeling this at all, or, as a business owner or whatever. Do you feel that there's a lot of content to consume right now that we're all like at home? Do you feel overwhelmed or?
I mean, I know I personally do. I think we were already sort of at content overwhelm before all of this, all of our lives were changing and we were working from home. But I think it's much easier to feel overwhelmed by content now that we're all home, in part because there's a lot less separation between when we're working and when we're not. And I think anyone who's kind of had to adjust to working from home probably felt that to some degree. Like when you're at work and then you go home, you switch from reading emails to watching Netflix or playing games or something, right? Now that we're just home all the time, there can be this pressure to just always be consuming, always be learning, always be working. And so I think it's a lot easier to get overwhelmed right now. That's for sure.
Oh yeah, definitely. I can totally identify with that. I've worked from home for 7 years now, but I left working from home and joined a co-working space so I could get away from home. And now I'm like, oh, got to come home. Now I got to manage with everyone else here. So
I was the same way. Even though I work from home, I had a co-working space nearby because for me, I still needed to be able to like turn work on and off. I needed to get into that mode. And I don't know. I have a young child. I have a 7-month-old here at home. And so there's always like, to cuddle with her, to play a game with her, to take her on a walk or play, do something, start a load of laundry, wash bottles. Like there's plenty to be done. And so getting away from that is usually my secret to productivity. So it's definitely an adjustment now.
Yeah, definitely. Chris, do you have something? I thought you wanted to say something.
No, I was just listening.
Oh, okay. So let's talk a little bit about the book.
Sure.
How long has it been out? And kind of tell about that.
Yeah. So this is the book, the Content Fuel Framework: How to Generate Unlimited Story Ideas. The book came out at the end of February, which is like kind of a horrible time to launch a book, it turns out, in the current situation. But what's really cool about it is that it was really designed, like the reason I wrote the book was to help people very tactically, like very actionable, figure out how to come up with story ideas. And I think a lot of people are actually trying to focus on that right now. Like so many people, now that we're home, we're trying to think, maybe I should finally do that YouTube series I've been talking about. Maybe I should do a daily live, or I should start a podcast, or update my blog, finally write a book, like whatever it is, that big creative project you've been putting off. A lot of people are trying to use their new schedule, their new time to work those creative projects in. And so hopefully it proves helpful for people who are, trying to start something new, build some momentum, and figure out what they should talk about in those different things, whether it's for like yourself or your creative output, or for a business to build your personal brand, whatever the case may be.
Right. And so I guess I want to get into, you talked about tactics that would help people tell their story. Do you feel that, I mean, I don't know, I haven't read the book, so I'm going to need to get it so that I can really maybe get some insight or even be inspired. I'm sure I have been inspired by doing some research with you and really just figuring out that, that it's necessary, I guess, to tell your story.
Sure.
I think for me, and maybe you could help with this, for me, I don't know when I am telling my story. Right. Because it's like, I'm just talking about things in my life. Like how do you differentiate between posting about certain things, the day-to-day things, versus this is me telling my story?
So I think one of the things that like an important differentiation is, this book in particular is about how to tell your stories through content. And so it's not necessarily just stories that are your story or like your the giant story of you that you somehow have to have an idea of and plot over the course of your life. It's really about anytime you're creating a piece of content. So that is a post on Instagram or, a video like we're creating now. How are you planning that in a strategic way so that you make sure you're not running out of ideas? So I'll give you like a really tactical example. Is a show like this, right? You're doing what I would call people-focused content. You have guests come on, you talk to them. It's about that person and about the conversation you're having together. So I would call this people-focused content. And you're telling that through live video right now. When you upload the video later, it'll be sort of a static video. And then it sounds like you also share that through just audio. So you're using multiple different formats to tell one people-focused story. A lot of people, if they don't have a series like you have, where they have different guests week after week, if they're just doing a vlog, for example, like many YouTubers do, they might start to feel after a little while like, I'm running out of stuff to say. How many times can I talk about my day? Exactly, right? A blogger too. How many times can I talk about my day? Or how many different makeup tutorials can I do? Or how many different ways can I talk about my product? And so this book is designed to help you come up with new ways, new approaches, new perspectives, ways you can talk about whatever those stories are. So, it's definitely important, like you were saying, sort of my story. When am I telling my story? It's important for you to have a sense of your personal brand and what's important for you to share and where you draw those lines. But this is more for coming over, like getting over writer's block or creator's block when you feel like, I just don't know how to say this any differently, or, how to say it in an exciting way, how to make sure people care about it.
Yeah, I just looked up your book right now on Amazon. You have some good reviews on there about people talking about their writer's block, right? And how you help them find solutions on how to overcome that.
Yeah, definitely. So that's the idea. I mean, what the book does, and let me see if I can find the page and I'll open it here for you guys. So, because I did say like it's very, very tactical. That was the goal. So this book, this part of the book, you can see it's kind of like a grid. So I know you can't read it, but I'll explain what it is. So basically across the top here are the different content focuses. So the very first one is actually people, which I just mentioned. This is an example of people-focused content. And then on the side are different formats. So here's live video, and here's audio, which are the three we were just talking about. The idea is in this book, I walk through 10 different focuses, 10 different things you can create content about, different ways to approach it, and then 10 different formats, ways you can bring that content to life. So what you end up with is 100 possible combinations. So the idea is not that you would create 100 pieces of content like from this one interview. That might be overwhelming. But if you were sitting there saying, I've got a new product or a new event that's coming up, or, we're launching a new service of some kind. How do we get that word out to our audience? You could think through, okay, can I tell this story in a people-focused way? Can I tell it in a data-focused way? Can I tell it through opinion, why I think it's a great product. And so it would kind of give you a bunch of different prompts and potential ways to tell that story. So it kind of makes it so that you never have to start from scratch.
Oh, amazing. I'm like, yes, can I get the book right now? I mean, I think that is, that goes along with, being overwhelmed, because you do see all of those types of content while you're online, and then you're figuring out like what is working for you, what will work for you or your clients, whoever you serve,
exactly.
right?
And that's the idea, is not, again, you're not supposed to create all of them. That would be too overwhelming. I don't create all of them. None of us do, right? But it's just that, like you were saying, for different stories, you might want to create a video in some instances, and you might want to write a blog in other instances. But if you start every single brainstorm, or if you're sitting down saying, okay, I must come up with a whole month's worth of video ideas or a whole year's worth of blog topics, you're going to feel that overwhelmed because you won't know where to start. So this is supposed to function, kind of like a guide to help you through that thought process of how do you come up with the right stories to tell? How do you pick which format or which focus? And then you've got plenty to choose from. You could decide whichever ones you like best to move forward with.
Right. Yeah. And I think, go ahead.
Because I think if you plan too far ahead, what happens is you won't probably stick to that plan either, right? I think the best thing to do is have your main goal, but of course, like sub goals on top of that goals, because you will eventually probably pivot somewhere in between. And that's okay,
And your marketing also needs to be real time and reactive in some instances. So, we've seen some examples of that as of late. Like we said, many of us are in different scenarios than we were a few weeks ago. And so having the flexibility to change your marketing to news, to current events, to, any kind of thing. Even, it's something small, but we remember, gosh, it was like 2 months ago when Kobe Bryant passed very suddenly, right? That was not at all expected. If you're a sports brand, you want to have the flexibility. You don't want to wish condolences a month or two from now. You need to have some real-time ability to adjust your messaging when something big happens, positive or negative, to be able to be a part of the conversation that your audience is having. So that combination of, these are our major points, these are our tent poles that are happening throughout the year, back to school, summer, Mother's Day, whatever those important events are, but also having space in between to fill with more timely content, I think is the right balance to strike.
Yeah, like one thing that we do in software development or in that industry, in the tech industry, is using Agile, like to be more scalable. So this way you can pivot quickly, right? You just get things out and then you start reiterating on top of it and learning from it, getting feedback, and then going back to changing what the goals may be, right? Because you learn because as you release, I'm assuming it might be the same as you release content, you'll probably figure out that maybe you didn't get the feedback that you thought you would.
Yeah.
And you have to learn from that and then go back and reiterate.
I think it's also good. Sorry, Melanie, to it sounds like, you said right now might not be the best time to release a book, but I think it is the right time to get that stuff in the book, because this is the time to really set your foundation. Like, what are you going to work on and focus on, not just now because of the times, but business is going to be different in a month, in 2 months, in 3 months. We're going to start getting back to normal. And then what are you going to use with this time that you're able to plan stuff?
Yeah. So. And I think the other thing that's important to talk about here too is, while a lot of people are finding themselves with tons of free time, this is also, it's a hard time for many people. It's new routines. It's, you're working I'm not in my usual office setting. I don't have all the equipment or the resources that I usually do. That's true for a lot of people. And so one thing I've been trying to stress at this point too is, don't put a ton of pressure on yourself that during this particular time, you're going to launch the best ever, you're going to write a book next week and you're going to launch a new YouTube series and finally update your blog and get 1 million followers on Instagram. Be realistic. You're still a human. There's still other things happening in your life, in your world, right? As you said, things are changing very quickly. So I think it's also really important to set realistic goals. And I don't mean to lower your standards. That's not what we mean here, but just be realistic about what you can accomplish, because it's much more important that you do something consistently and grow over time than you sort of try to start big and do a little bit of everything and be unable to keep up with that, because that's going to end up upsetting you and making it harder for you to keep doing the parts that you do love, you know? So I always recommend start with one thing, do that well, get comfortable with it. And then once you're comfortable with that, add in another element, right? So add in a blog or add in a YouTube series. Once you've got one thing down pat and you're comfortable, you know how much time and effort it takes. It's a lot easier to scale up, you know, emotionally and with your resources than it is to have to scale back.
Exactly.
You sound like you're talking to us right now with our podcast, because that's exactly what we did. We said, let's just go do it consistently and not miss any weeks and not get worried about, you know, the numbers of the subscribers, which we love to see that grow, because it's all organic. Like it's been very organic. Like we haven't said, follow us here. And, you know, it's just a matter of like what we're putting out. And now we're ready to go to that next step of repurposing.
Now we're getting ready to start marketing a little bit. Because I mean, it has grown organically. I mean, slowly, but I mean, it's fine, which I think is nice, because I don't know, it's just people finding us. I don't know how we're getting this. I don't know how we're getting people to follow us or subscribe to us, but now once we start marketing that, now we got that feedback that people are interested in subscribing. So if we do market it, hopefully we'll see. I mean, we'll see what the outcome is, but
well, and because you're creating your show week to week, it also allows you that exact, you know, flexibility that we were talking about. So if you start hearing feedback that, okay, people really liked episode 4, episode 11, and episode 22, those were the most downloaded. Okay, what's the commonality there? These were all this type of marketer, or in all 3 instances, those were longer or shorter episodes, right? So you can look at that data and iterate over time. So you have that consistency of knowing it's coming out the same day or time every single week, but also enough planning time to be able to adapt to the feedback you get, which is really smart.
Well, what's funny is actually like the one with the most views, I think, is just the one where Marissa and I were just talking.
I mean, I'll see myself out. I'll go.
No,
you guys got this.
I don't know why that was. Right.
It could have been that one a little bit, though. Yeah. You know?
That may be it.
Yeah.
You never know.
But hey, that's valid feedback too, right? So if you're looking at your data and it says, hey, maybe we have better conversations, just the two of us. I mean, there are plenty of shows that function that way too. And so I always think, you know, you'll have to look at your data, crunch the numbers, and having, what is it, 25 episodes you have now?
You're 27, I think.
There you go. So 27, you'll be able to, that's a substantial amount of data to be able to crunch the numbers and see what your audience is liking.
Right. Yeah. Well, thank you for inspiring us. Now we're going to go look at the numbers.
Yeah, do it.
So like what's right now, you know, the book we can get on Amazon, which is a little bit of a delay because it's currently the situation, but what's next for you? Like, I know you just spoke at social media marketing world, and what's next?
So, you know, unfortunately, you know, a lot of the events that I was planning to speak at, you know, are not happening at this particular point, but there's plenty of other things that I'm focused on. So I'm actually creating a companion workbook, a digital workbook that goes alongside the book. So for people who really want to like take it page by page and actually do the work and come up with stuff, there's going to be a workbook. Actually, my final task later today is to approve the latest round of changes on that. So hopefully we'll have that live, you know, very soon on my website at StoryFuel.co. There's a mastermind. So I have the Brand Storyteller Mastermind. I do once or twice a year, just depending on enrollment. And we're going to have that probably coming up starting in April. We've got some interest right now. So in April, we may be starting that up. And again, find more info about that at storyfuel.co. And I'm also just trying to have a little bit of fun and experiment with things. I mean, I'm doing more live video than I've done personally. I'm spending more time on social media, just engaging with people, joining Twitter chats. Like I'm just really trying to see the positives as best I can in the changes that we're all experiencing, and try to find opportunity where I can connect with people, you know, learn more, and just make the best out of our situation.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes. I have a question too about speaking. So how did you get started with speaking, and how's that helping you right now with your career?
Yeah. So actually, you know, a big part of my business, I would say honestly, like 50 to 60% of the revenue of my business comes from speaking. So I'm a professional speaker and trainer. And so unfortunately, right now, this exact moment, it's not helping much, right? Events aren't happening, but I do have a lot of experience teaching online. So, I've taught online as an adjunct professor for a number of universities. So I'm very comfortable doing webinars and things. So there's still plenty of, opportunity there to be helping teams and companies and audiences via webinar. So we're working on some of those things. But how I got into it was actually, again, I wish I had some magical insight, but it was truly just someone on my team was invited to speak at an event and they couldn't make it. And so I went in their place. I actually didn't even present my own stuff. I was presenting their research at the time. It was like I was literally a fill-in, but I did it. And I really enjoyed it. I had so much fun being on stage and sharing it with people. The feedback was really good. And I thought, man, I really would like to do that again. And so over the course of my, full-time roles, I took every opportunity I could to present at, team meetings, to represent us at, our sales offsite, to do trainings internally to kind of build reps and build experience in doing that. And then once I knew I was going to be going out on my own, I planned ahead and I tried to pitch myself as a speaker. I always tell everyone to, there are plenty of courses and professionals and coaches that have helped me along the way. I've taken courses on speaking. I've done training with coaches. I've gone to speaking boot camps and programs. I mean, if you want to learn a skill, it makes sense to invest and to do it right. And so building a speaking business is something that took me, 6 years over time, in baby steps, to the point where now, in 2019, 2020, I'm blessed to have that as a major part of my business.
Yeah, I just started going to Toastmasters.
Yeah.
Just to get better.
Yeah, I think it's just, becoming more comfortable. I think that's with everything. I mean, you said you started, just anywhere you could teach or present was where you started. And I think that kind of can filter over into like content, like start somewhere and then figure out what works and then keep going. And it's not like 1 month, you're done. Okay.
Right.
That's it.
There's a guy named Brian Fanzo. He's on social as iSocial Fans. I don't know if you guys follow him or your listeners, but definitely check him out. His whole thing is he says, press the damn button. Like, it doesn't matter what it is, just go make it. Like, everything, you just need to get started. It is so much better to just start and learn as you go. And I know some businesses, some industries don't have that liberty. If you work in the medical field or the legal field or insurance or something, you're probably heavily regulated. You can't just wing it. I get that. But it's so much better for you to start with an imperfect product and like just be creating. Just start that blog, start going on live, start posting on whatever platform, because then it's not scary. You already did it. Go from there. Right. It's like the first time you do anything is always stressful. And if you're building it up so much that you haven't done it for years, that's like, it becomes an impossible barrier. If you just get started, just go out and make the thing, do the thing, post the thing, you're that much closer to being great at it.
Oh yeah. I can totally resonate with that. I think, the insurance specifically, there's one person that I know that I follow on LinkedIn. He has LinkedIn Live. Somehow this insurance agent got LinkedIn Live, which is really kind of amazing. But really all he does is people-based content, like you said. Like, he just talks to people. He doesn't sell his services, doesn't talk about insurance, doesn't talk about any of that. But he's going live and bringing people into his network, and then the conversation shifts over to insurance after, after all that. And I'm like, oh, that's so innovative. It's like he has that product, but he doesn't even need to sell it. He's just building relationships.
And I'm glad you said product, because one of the focuses in the book that we talk about is product. You have to focus on your product at some point. I think the mistake a lot of marketers make is everything is focused on the product. And just like you were saying, who wants to, I mean, you don't need to interact with an insurance agent every day. I hope you don't. I hope your life is not so catastrophic that you need to talk to an insurance agent every day, right? Most of us need that occasionally. And so if someone is only providing product-focused content, there's very little incentive for you to follow them or engage with them, because you probably don't need that product-focused content every single day. And that's why the mix, I think, is really important. There's value in following this guy because you're meeting interesting people and you're learning different things and you're seeing glimpses into their life. You might be learning about tangential topics, and I think that's how we can really focus on growing a community, growing our audience, growing our engagement, is just providing value on a consistent basis, even when it's not directly product related.
Yes. Very well said. That's awesome. Yes, totally. Okay. So Chris, do you have anything else? I was going to ask our random question.
No. Do you have one?
Okay. I do have one.
Okay.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
So,
Melanie, we have a random question that at the end of every episode.
Okay.
So it might be wild or it might be,
just to get to know you. You can refrain from it. Okay, so you want a prize. The prize has two options. You can either choose one or the other. Can't choose both.
Okay.
The first option is a year in Europe, and let's just pretend like there's no travel ban or anything. A year in Europe with a monthly stipend of $2,000.
Okay.
Or the second option is 10 minutes on the moon. Which option do you choose?
Whoa. No, a year in Europe. I would go.
Oh, really? Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, because I think I would take back more from that. I could meet people and have way more experiences. Yeah, for sure.
Got it. Okay, cool.
Plus, maybe someday we can all go to the moon.
Right.
Well, I was just thinking that travel to the moon is a very long time. Like,
yeah,
I think it's over a year.
But 10 minutes on the moon, just imagine. I don't know.
I know. It does sound really cool. I think at this point, I'll take Europe.
Okay. Oh, yeah. Awesome.
I think I'm on the same side with Melanie on this one.
Okay. Yeah. Well, then I'm on the moon. So
we'll wave to you from Europe.
Okay. All right. If people want to connect with you, they can find you on all the social media, on your website, storyfuel.co, or on Twitter. I guess that's your preferred platform right now.
Come find me on Twitter. I'm having all kinds of fun over there.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us. And if you want the Content Fuel Framework book, go to the website, storyfuel.co. And it's also available on Amazon, but I'm sure all the info is on your website.
It is.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for letting me share my story.
Have a good day.
You too.
Bye.